Alrighty, the great Mort Dog has finally put down a patch 14.1 rundown. Um, the meta for the last month has been interesting. It's been some fun, some down times, everything in between. But he's been leaking a little bit of stuff, and I've seen some stuff online, so I know a little bit's coming into this. But this is my full breakdown on it overall. Things I'm hoping to see are true damage, spat obviously going down. I think that AD Flex with Kate and Ez probably need to go down a little bit. 6 Sentinel at face value looks a little strong, but that's mainly because of how good Ari is. So I don't know about if Ari is the way to balance that. Anyway, I can go on and on about the current patch, but I'm expecting a lot of buffs and nerfs across the board, and I'm also hoping for some system changes. I've heard some pretty controversial ones, especially with streaks. So anyway, let's just get right into it. Be sure, check out Mort's video himself. Give him a like, subscribe. Obviously, he's the GOAT. If you play TFT, you already know that. So anyway, let's get into it.
Hey everybody, Riot Mort here after a long winter break. It's been a while since we've had a patch, and we are here with the patch 14.1 rundown. Welcome to 2024. It's been a while. So generally, when the meta sits for this long, even if it's a good meta, it kind of gets solved a bit. We know the things people are struggling with, things like True Damage Emblem, AD Flex, yada yada, and we know the things we want to be more successful. With this patch, there's quite a bit going on here, but it's a big focus on generally trying to make more things successful and more things played in a healthy way. So you'll see some of that.
First, I like that. I think obviously Ari's a little strong, and I think True Damage Shot's probably a little too strong. But overall, I just like to see stuff being raced up rather than stuff getting nerfed to the ground. No one likes playing a comp that's hitting like a wet noodle or does nothing. So rather than bringing all the top classes all the way down, yeah, I like the idea of bringing everything up. That's a general, gameplay perspective that I appreciate.
And some of our system changes. But yeah, so it is a big patch. There's a lot to go into. So let's dive right in because I don't want to be here for hours. All right, first up, headliners. So headliners had a rule that we added at the last minute where if more than half the pool was gone, you couldn't hit a headliner. It did its job, which was preventing this whole, sell for your headliner and hit a 3-star, 4-cost, and 5-cost. But it was really confusing. It felt like hidden knowledge that players didn't know, things like that. So we're trying to simplify. Oh, the other thing it did is that, like, let's say 2 players in your lobby found an Ari, you were just screwed. If you really wanted to play Ari, you couldn't play it anymore. It just was completely out of the question.
Real quick, yeah, many a times that has happened. If you don't scout and you're just trying to roll and maybe you're watching Netflix on the side or something and you're not paying attention to everyone in the lobby, and then you realize the whole time you were never able to get that 4-cost. Bro, that sucks.
Question. So we're adjusting the rule now to be a lot simpler and easier to understand. Basically, for 1, 2, and 3 costs, there's no restrictions. If there are only 3 Yones left in the pool, he can still show up as a headliner, no problem. There's no restrictions whatsoever. For 4-cost and 5-cost champions, the restriction is if you own more than 4 copies or 3 copies, 4 for 4 cost, 3 for 5 cost, then you can't see the headliner. Again, this is mostly to prevent the I find 6 Zacks, sell my headliner, buy headliner Zack. That's what it's there to prevent. But otherwise, so again, that example where 2 other players have Ari, you could still hit Ari. It's just you. Should be a simpler rule, should be more intuitive, and should be easier to understand. So hopefully this makes headliner system even better.
I won't touch on it too long. Great change. I think that clears up frustration and confusion, and it doesn't hurt you as much if you're not scouting every single round for every single board for everything. So anyway, great change.
All right, next change is a bit of a controversial one, but streaks.
This is the one I've heard
about. One of the
about.
things we've seen in the beginning of the game, stage 2, is where you don't really have a ton of agency. You kind of hit a bunch of pairs.
No, before we even go on this, it is open fort meta, or you hit hard steal, and that's it. And it's no fun. I don't think TFT was ever designed to be this way. I can go on a rant for a long time about open forting. I think it's a viable strategy for maybe one person to do. Cool. I think that if half the lobby's doing it, and it's a really bad design by choice, and I think this fixing it. And then I've also seen this other change below. Spoiler alert: that if you tie currently, it's on whoever's board you are for whatever reason. But now it's both players take it as a loss, and they take damage, and their streaks are set 0. So great change.
And have a bunch of 2 stars, or you don't, and you have a weak board. The problem is, for the win streaker and the loss streaker, they were up a lot of gold, and that could make a big impact with compound interest in the way it works. Meanwhile, if you went win, loss, win, loss, win, you were kind of screwed. So we're kind of taking that low end, win, loss, win, loss, win, and the high end of perfect streaking, and we're bringing it down. We're bringing down the impact of streaks. Streaks are still there. There's still some additional bonus gold, but it shouldn't feel like a game is decided based off who streaked in the early game. So this will lower that impact. It might not be the perfect version, but we do want to try this with the lower impact of streaks. There could be a world where we go back to like 2 through 4, 5, 6, something like that, but we'll keep an eye on it. So
Sorry, I'm going to be pausing a lot probably through this. These are all I say my mind. I think that this is great in thought. I appreciate him saying that. He doesn't know if it's the right thing. They just want to change it because currently open forwarding and all that is just not good for the game. And while they try to figure it out, this is maybe the way they think to do it because now at 2-1, you don't automatically get streaks. And anyway, so I think this is a good change. And I think if it doesn't even work out, at least they're trying something and they will figure it out. We know that they will figure it out. I just glad they're addressing it and trying to fix it.
but that's the main reason we're doing that. Next up, something that's been in our game for a long time is ties, right? This could be two players open forwarding, or this could be, just a sudden death happening, things like that, because combat went long. Hilariously enough, we never actually sat down and designed what is the rule for a tie. We kind of just accepted that it was random, except it wasn't really random. It was whoever traveled to the other player's board, which is nonsense. It's just a nonsense rule. It made no sense. So we
Very
decided
much
to finally
agree,
give it a rule.
Very much
and the
agree.
rule is if players tie in any way, both players will take player damage like they lost. And to prevent the issue that would cause this to just be like an open fort meta or it'd be advantageous because like both players get a lost streak, it actually just resets your streak completely to 0. So for example, if you both have a target dummy, yep, it'll be a tie, your streaks get reset, no cheating it. Now, you might ask the question, well, doesn't this just mean you play a 1-star Nami? Yeah, you could just play a 1-star Nami, and that's okay. We're not trying to get rid of lost streaking at all, but we are trying to make it clear. This is about designing a clear rule, and so now there will be a clear rule here. So, and even in the 1-star Nami case, at least the combat will resolve, and there's still some risk. So, finally, the last one here is we made an emblem adjustment. Country, we like that players can be able to play with 7 country, but it just wasn't accessible enough. And Jazz was really just too strong to be that accessible. If Jazz is tuned in a healthy state, which Jazz was kind of weak this patch, but we saw when Jazz was strong, Spatula plus Cloak is just a lot of generic power. So we decided to swap them. So now Country, excuse me, Country is now the buildable one, which means you can get 7 country more often. Jazz is uncraftable, and you'll see some balance adjustments later in the patch to make up for that.
I'm going to touch on the systems overall real quick. Sorry, when there's a lot of system stuff, I like breaking it down individually versus like champions or items as a whole, because systems obviously change the entire core of the game. Overall headliner change I think is great. Streaks, I think I'm excited to try it and excited to see it. I've heard mixed opinions, but overall we're going to see what the state of the game is for with it because open forwarding needs to go away. I don't care what needs to be done. The entire half of the lobby should not be able to open fort and top fort. No, I'm all for trying to change it up. Combat ties. It's something I never even really thought of. I guess they didn't either, obviously, from a design standpoint. I think it should have never been whose board. That's just RNG, whose board you decide to go to. That's how a tiebreakers changed. This is great. And then for the emblem adjustment, we'll have to see. Country currently it can be good with the smear comp, but I'm not sure where you would throw in the country spat. Maybe you throw in like the Twitch instead of the Vex and the Moo, and then the Twitch might be able to get some extra, I don't know, just benefit from it more. I'm not sure. And then Jazz, I'm comfortable. It's fine. When Jazz is strong, everyone plays Jazz. You can super, put it across the board, 2 people, and you get a bunch of bonuses. So I'm fine with it not being craftable, especially if they're trying to buff it from what it sounds like he's saying. Anyway.
All right, continuing on. New portals. So when we launched the set, we explicitly were.
I'm going to pause it here before we even talk about the portals. Overall, as portals, I'm not going to touch much on them. I have to play on them. There's not much to tell about them. Some of them seem like I can read some of them. First guys seem fun. Some of them seem ones I'll never vote for, just as a whole. But I'm still going to listen to it. But anyway, I'm not going to pause it for any of the rest of the portals.
We're like, we want to make sure for the start of the set, the portals are relatively low impact, right? They're things that aren't going to change the game too much so that you could focus on headliners and all the new units. Well, it's been a month and a half. Time to crank it up a notch. And so these portals are definitely about cranking it up a notch and letting some more fun stuff happen. If you're one of those like overly competitive players, they're like, these are all for fun portals. Yeah, kinda. That's intentional. So
I'll run through expression there.
Spatula,
that was awesome.
Spatula. Yep, cool. Tactician's Crown. Yep, +1 unit, easy. Support Anvil. Yep, get a support item. Crescendo. This is going to be augments in the game will be silver, gold, prismatic. Not a favorite of mine, but decrescendo, reverse order, prismatic, gold, silver. No problem. Champion Delivery. You might remember this as Yordle Portal or Flushing Arena. Twice per stage, gain a high-cost champion. So some extra gold. Pretty cool.
Pretty fun.
Radiant Blessing. At 40 health, get a blessing that contains powerful loot. Cool, that's back. Treasure Armory. These are treasure dragons. At 4/5, choose a 5-piece package of powerful loot. This does include the Radiant and Shadow ones, so they're back like normal.
Hey. Like
Wandering Trainers. This
Treasure
is a new
Dragon.
one you've never seen before. This one's a little wild. This is probably the most for fun. If you're playing in a tournament, I don't recommend picking Wandering Trainers. But everyone gets a training dummy with 3 permanently attached emblems. It's 3 random emblems. It can't repeat, but you could end up with, I don't know, Disco Dazzler
Oh
and
boy.
Hyper Pop, or you could end up with Edgelord, Rapid Fire, whatever, So enjoy
Or
that. Could be
fun
a pretty fun
games, he
game.
says.
Loot subscription. You might remember this as Hall of the Nine. This is another pretty zany one where every stage gain a random loot from a highly varied pool. Could be a boot, could be a tome of traits, could be a spatula, could be many things. But this is the old Hall of the Nine.
The boot.
And then
Good
finally, one of
old
my
boot.
favorites here, Crab Rave. Dancing crabs replace monsters
I'll
and drop
talk about
bonus
this
loot,
one.
but crabs on stage 5 plus are extremely dangerous. So basically, it's Scuttle Puddle, but the crabs are dancing, which is hilarious and cute. But when you get to stage 5, you might lose a PvE match. You better have some health because it can kick your
That's
butt.
so fucking good.
Big giant dancing crabs do a lot of damage. So 11 new portals. Give them a try. Should spice up the game a bit. And yeah, especially if you're looking for some wild games.
Sorry, I was trying to. Oh, okay. So I'm gonna just touch on this real quick. My overall thoughts. Most of these sound okay. The ones that I'm most interested in playing probably are Crab Rave. That just sounds hilarious. I miss this stages in the game when you could play the dragon and had items on it. You could actually lose to it. I'm just excited for that. It was always fun. Outside of that, the only one that really sticks out to me, I mean, the champion delivery. I like that. Outside of that, not anything too crazy to think of. The only thing that's funny is the Wandering Trainer. He mentioned it's like if that's the most for fun one, probably for one person, because that one person who's probably going to be me is going to get a Sentinel, a Bruiser, and a Guardian emblem. And you're gonna be like, oh, that's great frontline, but then it doesn't actually work out. You know what I mean? That's where I'm gonna get. I'm not gonna get the great ones. My RNG when it comes to those kind of things, I don't ever pick support items because I never get the RNG from. But that one person is gonna have a great game. I promise.
Give them a try. Should spice up the game a bit. And yeah, especially if you're looking for some wild games. All right, on the trait side, 8-bit was a trait that you basically were like, if I happen to be playing Corki or Caitlyn or Riven, cool, I'm glad it's active, but you weren't really excited about it. And the actual benefit, if you compare it to something like Big Shot, for example, was really kind of laughable considering you had to stack it. So we're putting power in the trait, and you'll see later we're pulling it out of some of the champions. But we want the trait to be exciting. We want the emblem to be like something you're excited to put on somebody else. So 8-bit goes up from 4.5, 7.5, 12 to 5, 9, 14. Pretty big buff at 4. I think that's the biggest impact one here.
I'm gonna touch a few on these traits that I think worth touching on. I play a lot of 8-bit. I love 8-bit. I love the aesthetic of it, the top of it, and everything. My little arcade on the side, it's my homie. I think 8-bit as a whole is a really interesting trait, and I won't go too far into it, but it's a stacking that goes into the late game, and it's not very good early game, but to get to the late game, you have to. He's right. You don't play 8-bit really a lot for the AD. It's nice if you have it at the end, but it's at the more or less you play Corki early game because of Big Shot, or you play Caitlyn if you want the AD flex, right? That's kind of the way. There are some builds with Riven. I understand. I like the Riven build. I was playing it a lot prior to the True Damage emblem meta. But as a whole, 8-bit is a little underwhelming, even though it's one of my favorite traits. I'm excited to see it go to 9%. I don't know how much it really changes. I'd have to play it, but an extra 1.5 AD per stack is something not to nudge about. I'm excited to try some 8-bit comps. That Riven is coming back. Riven's coming back.
Crowd Diver. Crowd Diver's in this weird position where like 2 Crowd Diver was kind of a joke. I don't know why you were playing 2 Crowd Diver.
Me,
6
I
Crowd
was
Diver
playing
was insane.
2 Crowd
6 Crowd
Diver.
Diver was great. You could
For
win
no
lobbies
reason.
off of 6 Crowd Diver. We're going to sandwich that a little bit here. So 2 Crowd Diver gets a pretty substantial buff to 12%. You should be happy to run a 2 Crowd Diver Katarina early. And then 6 is coming down to 50%. All right, EDM, bit of a complicated trait here, and you'll see this is tied with other champion changes later.
EDM
right now,
hurts my
EDM
brain.
5, great, probably too strong. Anything below EDM 5, not that great. So we're buffing 2 EDM to help you onboard into it a little bit. We're nerfing, it looks like a buff, but we're nerfing 5 EDM. It'll do more damage, but you won't get that extra 1 second cooldown that causes the spells to be really, really spammy. And then Jax was kind of like the best version of EDM right now, which a little overbuff here on our part last time. So the Jax base timer is going back to 8 seconds. But again, you'll see later with some champion changes, hopefully things like Lux and Zed are more playable. It's not a massive change to EDM or anything like that.
Won't touch much on the Crowd Diver. Crowd Diver didn't play too much of it. I played the cat comp way back when, but it is what it is. But it's a good comp. I'm fine with it. EDM hurts my brain. It's a complicated comp or trait. You pretty much play Jax because the base timer from him was the lowest out of them all, not because he was the best actual ability, but just because the lowest. Because Zac actually can heal and Lux can actually do damage. Zed is he's Zed. But it's just because of how low the timer was is why you played it. So I'm happy to see them potentially changing it, nerfing it pretty hard with the 5 stack with the frequency going from 2 seconds to 1 second. So that's a good buff, good change, not buff, nerf.
All right, emo. This is a big change. Emo was a trait that you played 2 a lot. 2 emo Poppy, 2 emo Annie, 2 emo Vex. All great. Anything more? Kind of a laugh. You're not playing more. So we're buffing the mana reduction and mana on allied death. So this is a trait that should be a lot more about gaining a bunch of mana, casting more often. The 6 piece is getting its AP bonus nerfed, but again, we want emo to be a trait that you're willing to go vertical, and right now you really don't. You never do. Executioner. This one's kind of confusing. This is meant to be a small buff to 6, about neutral to 4, and a little bit of a buff
Does that
to
say
2. But the general idea with
200%?
Executioner was, what it actually did was kind of confusing. You would
Mort, does that say 200% max critical strike chance? My boy, what you doing? 200%?
get, let's say you're running 4 Executioner, you would get 25% critical strike damage. Cool if you have a bunch of
My
IEs
boy.
and stuff, but if not,
My boy.
it basically meant 25% chance to take advantage of your trait, which is not great. And then the critical strike, so like the 35%, was basically only maxed if your opponent was at 0 health. So if you start combat, you had 0 critical strike, and that would slowly scale up. So if they're at half health, you were only gaining 17% critical strike. Ugh. So if you didn't have things like IE, JG, stuff like that,
That's
that
fair.
crit, or like Hodge or Guardbreaker, since you already crit, you were missing out on a lot of crit, and you were missing out on a lot of your trait. So we shifted that power. The critical strike damage is going down, but as you can see here, the crit strike chance is going way up, especially
Like
at 6. And yes, that says 200%.
way up.
What that means is if your opponent is at half health, you're gaining 100% critical strike at 6, which is great because then some of that converts into critical strike damage with that old 2-to-1 ratio. So TLDR, Executioners should actually crit now because that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to crit. Cool. They'll crit more. Great. Guardian Vertical just wasn't that great.
I'll talk about
buff
the
at
Guardian.
4, 10% buff.
It's not much for the Guardian from what it looks like.
Should help them be a competitive frontline with something like with 6 Sentinels, stuff like that.
Okay, we're gonna talk about this for a second. Executioner with Smear is already good, not bad. It's pretty good reroll comp if you can get it. If you can get it. I played a Vex reroll comp on PvE, wasn't too bad. This is crazy. I don't know them. I'd have to actually sit back and look at the numbers. 200% max critical strike chance is a lot when you hit 6. It's not super easy at 6. I understand that, but I don't know. It's a lot for where I feel like you're only losing 50% base critical strike damage, and in turn you're getting 145% critical strike chance, which then translates to critical strike damage as well, and 100% crit without any crit items. It literally means you go Samira and you don't have to build a single crit item, even at 4. You can go 4 and you still have 100% crit. And so you just go 80 items if you wanted to. I don't know the number. Somebody that's much better at math will know the numbers of exactly what to do, but that worries me because if you just go Death's Blade, Giant Slayer, I don't know, and let's say red buff or something, whatever it is, you don't have to build any 80 item or any crit items, and you can have 100% crit and still have critical strike damage and plus all the 80 raw 80 on top of it. I'm just saying, Executioners might be a comp. Guardian, it is good. Hopefully it comes in line with, it used to be the go-to over Sentinels and Bruisers. Sentinels took charge with this Auri comp. Hopefully comes back. Emo. I mean, I'm still not going to play vertical emo. Like I said, I played a Vex reroll comp with 4 emo on PvE. It worked out right, but I never felt like 4 emo was really doing that great for me. But we'll see.
So they'll have a lot of health. All right, Heartsteel. So Heartsteel's getting a bit of a nerf. At 5 and 7, you're going to see the heart multipliers go down from 2.5 to 2.25 and 6 to 5.5 respectively. But here's the new feature. If you've been watching my stream at all, maybe you've seen this. After 4 turns, you'll be presented with an option that you see here, cash out or raise the stakes. If you hit cash out, it's like you're playing the trait before. It's like it almost didn't change. So if you really like Heartsteel as is, just press cash out every time. No problem. The trait didn't change. But if you're somebody that likes those big, insane high roll games and likes to take risk for the 1 in a million shot, take raise the stakes. If you do, your box will turn golden, and you are now in raise the stakes mode. In this mode, you're
I get a
double
Gamba even more.
If you win a combat, you'll lose half your hearts. Your objective is to lose 4 in a row. If you do, you'll get a bunch more hearts than normal. This will be good. If you can go another 4, same thing, you'll get a really big cash out with like an extra 100 hearts on top of that, multiplied by everything. So if you really want to go for that crazy YouTuber, you want to get Heartsteel in, 4 win, switch to 5 Heartsteel, 8 loss, and then have a grand old time. So, but realistically, our expectation is you will not see this in Challenger lobbies. It's way too risky. You will go 8th. People will grief you. It is not meant to be like the way to play.
That's
Heartsteel.
me.
It's meant to be
I will go 8th.
thing to kind of gamble around and get those crazy cash outs. So
That's me. I'm gonna go wait, but you bet your sweet peppy ass I'm gonna do it. You guys gave me more chances to Gamba. Say no more. Say less. Say less.
Okay, Hyperpop. Hyperpop is a trait that
Joke aside, I think it's a fun change they're adding to Heartsteel. They're nerfing Heartsteel a little bit, and it's fair because again of the whole open forwarding or lose streaking, whatever. They were nerfing it a little bit, but they're also like, hey, you want to have a little bit more fun? You want to throw your entire life savings away? Go ahead. So go for it.
has kind of been non-existent. Like obviously people play Lulu and Ziggs, but no one's really chasing vertical hyperpop.
That's
So
actually
it's
really
getting
true.
a really big buff here, actually, almost double at 3 and 4 to the mana regeneration.
Huh.
And we're already seeing some strats emerge, by the way, where you run like 2 Lulus and they just feed each other with hyperpop. So definitely some cool options. But
Some
we want to see
Lulus with
hyperpop
some
be played, and that's
Shojins.
Jazz. This is another trait that now with the emblem being gone, we can get a little extra power. So it's gaining a little bit more health at 3 and quite a bit more health at 4. So Jazz comps hopefully will start to make a comeback, get those wide traits and cool power from there,
Interesting.
especially combined with the Lucian changes later. I'm hoping to see some Jazz comps make a rise again.
It's interesting that they took away the spat and they said that he was saying that the reason was because when it's strong, it's too strong, but they didn't increase any of the damage. They kept when they nerfed the damage and the health. But now they're bringing back some health, but they're keeping the damage away. So unless we're seeing some more, I don't know how much Jazz specifically will be still good, or like how much better it's going to be. It might be something you splash in because for shits and gigs, but I'm not sure you try to chase 3. But we'll see.
6 and 8 Sentinel. I'll be honest with you, I'm skeptical these needed a nerf, but I know the perception around them. This is one of those perception nerfs. We nerfed 6.
He doesn't have to say it. We already know what it is. 6 Sentinel and Ari is the only reason why Sentinel. That's the first time this entire set we've heard anything about Sentinels. It was because of the Ari comp. Does that mean they were just being slept on and Ari really showed them, or is it that they are actually like super strong? It's hard to say because you really only see it in the Ari comp. I understand the nerfing of it. I still think Blitz is going to be ridiculously good. I think Mordekaiser is still going to be really, really good. But I understand the nerfs.
Slightly. Went from 60 to 55, and 8 got nerfed pretty handily. 8 mostly getting nerfed because the emblems will be more accessible through things like portals. If you get a wandering trainer portal with a Sentinel emblem, we don't want it to be an 8 Sentinel game every time. So the power did have to come down. That being said, we're not seeing a ton of like 6 Sentinel anything but RE, so we'll see. But definitely is coming down, and this should help the perception of the 6 Sentinel frontline, and hopefully make things like Guardian and Bruiser a little bit more comparable.
The only way they make Bruiser more comparable, sorry, I'm pausing a lot. Guardians got a little buff, fine. They have a lot of utility in the Guardians with like Thresh, for instance, and York can be pretty good. Bruisers, I feel like not only do their champions as a whole are not the overall best, I feel like you just never really choose Bruisers. You might choose Bruiser as an opener. You get 2 of them, and you get a 2-star, let's say Tom Kench or a Olaf. But outside of that, you don't really hit it unless you get a really lucky like 6 high roll comp or 6 Bruiser high roll comp and all that stuff. So anyway, I still don't think Bruiser's that great.
Finally, Spellweaver. 10-piece prismatic, basically no one. I mean, I think I've seen like 2 screenshots of it. It doesn't even like show up in our data for the most part because it's just so hard to hit. And yes, there will be new portals, but even when you did hit it, it was like, I gained a bunch of AP, so we're putting it back down to 9-piece. It'll be a gold. It's still there if you want to go like 9 Spellweaver. It's still 120% AP, which is great. But it is not a prismatic anymore, so it's coming down in power. Other than that, 7 Spellweaver gets a 10 AP buff. So if you want to go vertical Spellweaver, it should be a little bit better. Things like, RE right now are mostly not being played with Spellweaver, so hopefully this will help that be an option.
Yeah, I can't say that I've seen a lot of
on the champion side. Annie, this might look weird to you. You might be like, oh, they're finally nerfing Annie. Yes and no. This is meant to be an adjustment. The problem with Annie is if you have an Annie 2 on stage 2 with like 1 item, she's garbage. She's just terrible, just one of the worst, because she takes too long to ramp up to that empowered state where all of her power is. But if you had a 3-item Annie, she was as good as a 3 cost. She could really carry some fights. She was great. We're shifting that power. So early game, her first fireballs, those are getting buffed. She's actually going to hit harder. So like a stage 2 Annie with a single Shojin, those first few casts, they're going to hit harder. But when she enters that empowered state, it won't be quite as powerful, a little less attack speed, and that second fireball going down in damage. Again, total damage isn't actually going down that much. It's like a little bit. So I look at this as like actually pretty neutral. If anything, it might help you in the early game. But we wanted that power, like we wanted the 2-star Annie to be something you could actually play in stage 2 without saying, I must play Annie reroll. All right, Nami. So from here on out, you're going to see a lot of champion buffs, and it shouldn't be a surprise. You're basically, if in your mind a champion is weak, we probably buffed it. So let's start with Nami.
That's good.
Nami's pretty weak. You almost ignore this headliner completely if you're playing seriously.
Absolutely.
So Nami's going to cast more often. 15 mana off, which is great. Stun duration obviously comes down so that she doesn't...
I don't think, for the record, I don't think I've ever bought a Nami headliner. TBE, live, never once have I bought a Nami headliner. I'm going to be honest, even after this, Still not going to buy a Nami headliner. Just throwing it out there.
Unlock champions, but she's going to cast more often. Her spell damage did not go down, so she can cast more and do more damage. Cool. Olaf's going to do a bit more damage as well, and his missing health ratio conversion to attack speed is going to go up. So if you want to, for some reason, go 6 Bruiser, reroll Olaf with attack speed, cool, it'll be better. You'll get some more attack speed, though. This should help him be pretty strong in the early game, so cool. Tom Kench, same thing, another champion that you kind of mostly disregard. He's going to auto a little bit harder, cool, so he'll actually in fights, and gains 5 more armor and MR, making him a bit tanky, so tankier Tom Kench. Cool.
I won't touch too much on these. The Annie reroll was a crazy thing before Ari and the true damage spat. And they didn't really touch. People were upset about it. I get what he's saying. Is the Annie prior to her ramping up was pretty much hot garbage, and when she powered up, it was the exact opposite. So I like the direction they went with it. Nami, don't care. I'm so sorry. If you love the Nami, just don't care. It's not going to get me to play her. She might be better if you were running Disco or Dazzler, I guess, but no. Except for the Olaf. Like we're just talking about Bruiser, maybe Bruiser. If they add a couple more Bruiser buffs, you can maybe see an Olaf reroll comp maybe. Tom Kench, solid front line at the beginning, but then you just kind of don't really care much for him. So glad to see him some buffs.
Cool. Tarek, this is one of the biggest buffs I've ever done.
Bro, did I just read 565 damage for level 3 Tark spell damage? You're telling me after he gets his shield and his is like whatever, it's 1 or 2 attacks, he gets some magic damage on his attacks. He's getting 565 per attack, bro. Oh, I think we're gonna see some Tarek reroll. I cannot wait to hear his reasoning here. 565.
His spell damage is being multiplied by 250%. Some of you might be going, wait, Tarek does spell damage? Yeah, turns out the way Tarek works is when he casts his shield, his next 2 autos did extra damage.
Yeah.
They did laughable amounts of damage. Absolutely laughable amounts of damage.
Okay, if it's 100 for both of them, so 50 each, that's laughable. But if it's 100 each, that's not laughable. Because if this is 565 per auto, that's a quick maths. 1,200 something. No, 1,100 something in 2 autos. That's kind of a lot.
Now they're going to actually do some damage, not 0. So cool. We've tested it a bit on PB. It's not. You're not going to see Tarek reroll. It's not going to be anything like that. But at least he'll actually end it. Cool.
In my mind, what that means is that 565 is with both attacks. Because if it was 565 with each auto, I don't see how you wouldn't even at least think it could potentially be a reroll comp. You throw a Nashers on there and some tank items or something, you just get him to attack a shit ton and cast this. I'm just saying.
Vi.
Guardian buffs, some health items, bro. Just saying.
Vi is another champion that, if you see a Mosher headliner Vi in your shop right now, you're like, never in a million years.
Never.
Trying to change that a bit.
Never in a million years.
So her spell damage is going to go way up from 220 to 330. If they have more health, it's going to go all the way up to 450. So that punch should actually start to hit a little bit. And let's be real, her recommended items were telling you to make her a tank. She's not really a tank. So we changed it to attack fighter to recommend things like Titan's Resolve, Sterix, IE, stuff like that, Bloodthirst.
They shouldn't recommend items on her because I'm never going to put items on her. Sorry.
So again, from what I've seen, I don't think this makes Vi like S tier or anything like that, but it should help the punk comp a bit out in the early game as well. Speaking of which, Yasuo. Now this one looks scary in isolation, but we'll talk about more changes later. But we want Yasuo reroll to be a thing.
Increase
to be a thing. You should be able to play Yasuo reroll. Right now, you kind of can't. I mean, if everything goes perfectly, maybe, but realistically, no. So now per kill, he's going to get an extra 0.5% AD. From what we've seen on PB, it can be a lot better now. So cool, Yasuo reroll might be a thing.
This is a hot take. That's just a hot take. This is what I don't know if I agree with this, and I'll say why. So he gets 80 per kill for just being Yasuo. His bling bonus is he gets the execute and Omnivamp, I believe, right? I think they should swap it. And I think what you should do is if you have the bling bonus, you get the 80 on kill. And otherwise you just get Omnivamp or the execute. And I know it might seem weird, but the reason why I say that is because if you're gonna always go to true damage, but you can get this so early on with Kennen that you can get his 80 so high up. I just said that completely wrong. No, he gets it regardless, but I think you should get it with true damage so he can actually has to put it into there to ramp up, and you can't just not play true damage early on. I said that the exact opposite way. I know. Don't troll me. Don't troll me, chat. But anyway, I don't know. I just think maybe you should swap it. That's my personal design theory. Let me know if you disagree. But anyway, that's kind of how I feel towards Yasuo.
Cool. All right, Bard. So I've played a lot of Bard, trying to test him out and see how he feels. He's
The Brad is amazing. Just gonna say it. It's random as shit. Sometimes he loses games, but he's always a hero in your heart. Don't ever, don't ever say anything different,
okay until you're counting on him to do damage, and he goes heal, heal,
bro.
heal,
He's
damage, and you're
trying his
like,
best. He's trying his best.
cool,
Okay.
bro. Especially because at 3-star, his heal doesn't scale that much, so you really don't want him to heal, and that variance can feel really bad. So we're making it so that
But he's
every
just
time he
trying
casts
his
stuff in a random
best.
order, it will be 3
Bradley.
damage and 1 heal. Yes, he can still tip for a gold. That's always a bonus. But this should
Hold
help
on.
him be a more predictable carry.
Sorry. Let me actually show you this. Will always cast 3 damage dutes and 1 healing dute. Oh, that's actually crazy good. So he's always gonna hit. He's always gonna cast 3 damage dutes. That's crazy good. He's gonna be a great item holder if you go into like a TF comp or say fuck the TF and you go Brad comp. Oh, Bradley, you're gonna be the boy. You're gonna be the boy.
And we're buffing his spell damage a little bit. This should make Bard actually an option as an AP item holder. You should be in a good spot. So cool.
Yeah, he's gonna be
Base
the one.
Garen. Base Garen, okay to meh. Some
He
people
looks
say
cool.
he's good, but you don't see people really fighting over Garen.
Looks
The
sexy.
thing you'll see later is his headliner bonus was insane, 400 health early.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be nerfing that later, you'll see in the patch, and putting that back in the base. So we don't want to nerf headliner Garen, but we do want to buff base and keep the headliner the same. So 50 base HP, cool. And we're getting a little bit more health on each cast. Maybe Garen reroll shows up. I kind of doubt it, but should
I
like
doubt
Garen
that.
be an option. Gragas is another one. Gragas, laughable damage. And yes, before the Redditors start saying, oh my god, they buffed Taric and Nami and Gragas, Disco's going to be OP. No, but it does help Disco. It will be stronger. That's kind of the point.
Yeah.
Disco's not really a
That's
competitive
actually true.
but Gragas can do some damage, and so who knows? Maybe headliner reroll Gragas can actually pump out some damage.
Well.
Kai'Sa's another one. Kai'Sa's fine in stage 2, and then she falls off a cliff. So we're buffing her AD ratio a little bit. It's a very tiny buff. Her AP ratio a little bit, and this is to help her take advantage of KDA. If you want to play Kai'Sa with KDA, she should benefit from that a little bit more. And Kai'Sa will be doing Kai'Sa things. So
Okay, we're gonna stop here for a second. Garen reroll inherently. One of the big reasons why I don't think it'll ever really be a thing is kind of the effect that Ari had early on that they even changed when you hit the 3 stars. That when you go to single target, it's hard to make it a reroll if that person can't reliably kill. Annie is a great example. She does single target and then she'll hit 2 people, right? Or Ari 3-star now will hit. I think it's 1 person and the 2 extra people on top of the 3. When you do single target only, it's hard to be a hyper carry or a reroll comp even, unless you can reliably kill every cast. And Garen, I don't think he's going to be able to do that. I don't think his AD ratios will ever be able to make that to be a reroll comp. I could be wrong, but I just don't think so. You brought up something great about Disco comp. Disco's already not that bad TF. Everyone's going to say it's not that great, but it's because the current meta. I don't think it's actually that bad if you take away the Ari comp and the true damage spat. I don't think he's that bad. So at buffing Disco, it's fair to assume that it might be bad. We'll just have to see what the rest of the stuff says. Kai'Sa, I think the biggest problem, and you didn't touch on this, which is crazy to me, is that Kai'Sa just misses way too much. That's her issue. It's not about the damage she does or the how fast she attacks or she just misses. She can dash and she'll shoot it, and they just walk because of the way that the targeting works and the enemy AI walks. Whatever, she just misses way too much, and I think that's what needs to be addressed and fixed. And Kai'Sa will actually be really good because right now it doesn't matter how much her spell does if it doesn't hit. I think that would need to be changed.
oh, cool. Katarina's another champion that was strong for like the first 3 days, and then people figured out how to play against it.
True.
The other thing is that crowd diver nerf. I think the 6 crowd diver
her.
Katarina is basically non-existent. So we're gonna give her some attack speed to let her hopefully throw some more shurikens and be another strong 2-class carry.
That's whatever.
Kayle. Kale's an interesting one. Looking back on this, so this buff, debatable. I think there are some challenger players who will say Kayle doesn't need the buff. I know we've seen Dish Soap, for example, win lobbies with Kayle.
Why?
Happen. What's interesting about this buff, though, is that most of the buff is in the finale damage, not the attack speed. So if you're thinking like Ginsu's, probably don't roll in Ginsu's. Things like, Jeweled Gauntlet, Archangel, stuff like that are probably going to be more advantageous, and you still have to buy the time. But we do want Kayle to be something that you're like excited to buy and willing to play. So Kayle will be strong. Good.
I don't think I'll ever play Kayle.
This patch if you haven't detected the theme.
I won't.
Echo. Echo is a champion that basically goes in every comp. He has 3 amazing traits. Cool. We don't want to ruin that.
But
did you know Echo also does a massive AoE stun for 1.5 seconds? Why? I don't know. He probably doesn't need it. But for now, we're going to lower it down to 1 second duration. Hopefully, melee comps can actually not have to build Quicksilver every single game against an Echo, but we'll see. This is, again, meant to be a light nerf, and we'll go from there.
I'm probably gonna pause when it gets to bigger things. I think Echo is a true prime example of we had it like Sedge, back what was it, set 8 was Sedge, or was set 8, set 9, whatever it was, 8.5. I There's too many of them. Where essentially they're just auto includes, right? They're always an auto include, and Echo is one. He's either going to be in your Spellweaver comp for an Ari, who's also just happens to be a Sentinel to get the 6 Sentinel that you need. You play him in any true damage comp. You can play him in a Sentinel comp that you Splash Sentinel. You can play him in some random spell. Like, he's just so good for a trait as a 3 cost. And they had to nerf his damage because not only before the stun, he also did a shit ton of damage. They're like, you know what? Maybe you're right. He shouldn't do damage. Cool. But he still has a 1.5 second stun. That's huge in AoE. And he's still does okay, not great damage, but he still does some damage. And he's 3 of the arguably stronger traits, especially right now during the patch. And I think that's what's hitting hard. I think the 1 second's fine. Maybe you can even say half a second, or at least maybe keep the duration, but maybe reduce AoE is the way to go. Keep him a utility spec so he's not just a tank that does nothing, right? Make him have use, but maybe make the AoE a little bit slower or smaller, something like that. Yeah.
Lux is a weird champion.
And for the record, I love Echo. I love him as a champion, and I love him when they add him in. But right now, he's just an auto include in most comps.
Lux 3, pretty good. You can win lobbies with like 5 EDM Lux 3.
Yeah.
Getting there is a pain because Lux 2 and Lux 1, yeah, they're not great.
And also, why would you do that when you can get Jax right now? Just straight up, why would you do that when you can do Jax for easier?
Lux 1 and Lux 2, we're actually going to break our normal 50% spell framework here and just buff Lux 1 and Lux 2. She needs it. So hopefully Lux can be an item holder and an option you're willing to play. You know, if you get a Lux out of a box, you're supposed to be like, sweet.
I don't think those are enough.
Oh god, I hope I get 8 more or I'm going 8th. So
I don't think those are enough. With the EDM nerfs and you're only increasing her 2-star damage by 30, I just don't think that's enough. But again, like I said, she's already okay, but you just still choose Jax. So anyway, we'll see.
Mordekaiser, another one that okay, but I kind of want to get Headliner Mordekaiser to be something you're excited to play. And in order to do that, Headliner Mordekaiser needs to do damage, so we're buffing his base damage and his finale damage about 10%. Should be cool. Go Mordekaiser, rock on.
I'm gonna say it. I've been doing this. When I can get a Mordekaiser, I'll be one to admit it. I played Ari comp. Most people did when you can get it. I prefer to get a Mordekaiser Sentinel over anything. Mordekaiser Headliner is broken. I actually think it's so good because it scales. And if you actually put items on him and he scales up, that man rocks people's worlds. No pun intended. He is so good. And I think that they're only increasing that by this. My boy, Mordekaiser, we're going to rock.
All right, 4 costs. Ari, clearly the most popular champion as we head into the final days of the patch. Clearly the thing I'm getting pinged the most about why haven't you nerfed Ari? Nerf Ari. And she does. She needs a small nerf. This might not be the nerf people are expecting. I think a lot of people were maybe expecting spell damage down, things like that. But the reality is this is probably the nerf she needs, and we'll start with this and then go from there. We don't want to kill Ari. But this will slow down her cast, right? She's going to be casting those giant single target nukes slower, right? Her typical build of Shojin Nashers, she's going to need a little bit more time between each one. That's going to be the start. If it's not enough, we'll go from there. But the problem is if she doesn't do much damage, then she can't win fights at all. That's the problem with making a 4-cost single target champion. But this should help bring her down to a bit more reasonable level. She's still a 4-cost. She's still meant to win games. Just maybe not quite as many as she's winning right now.
These are 4 costs. They're carries. So I'm going to pause a little bit more. I apologize a lot for the stopping this video. You know what? I don't care. I take it back. This is my video. Just kidding. Anyway, Ari. I don't think this is enough. I don't think she needs an incredibly crazy nerf. But 0.05 attack speed nerf when you're already building a Nashers on her. The point is, once you cast once, you get the crazy amount of attack speed. And so the 0.05 is almost negligible, I'll be honest. I think just straight up the easiest way to probably nerf it is to maybe nerf her just spell damage. I think the also option, and he pointed it out, is that the inherent flaw of and I talked about this earlier with the Garen, with a 1-star that needs a carry, needs to be able to reliably kill their target to be a carry. They made Ari a 1 cost. They used her charm as the kind of way it looks, right? Prior sets, she had the big AoE with her orbs or whatnot. Now it's just a single target, charm, whatever. I'm gonna go out limits. I'm say it. I think you either need to just nerf the damage, and it sucks a little bit, or you just maybe change it. You just change the way the spell interacts and works. Because right now it's you do a little bit the first time, and then you do a lot the second time, and then you do a little bit the first time, and then a lot the second time. Right? That's how she works. Inherently, I just don't love it. It doesn't also doesn't really work in the way the charm is if you compare to the league equivalent. She charms and they take increased damage. It's not the charm that does a lot of damage. They charm and walk towards her and you know take more damage. So I don't know. I just don't know if this is the way I would choose to nerf the RE. But I digress.
Karthus. This is an interesting one, and I think a pretty debatable one. But Karthus, we're lowering his starting mana a little bit just to slow him down a notch. And right now, Karthus is generally perceived as weak. There's a couple niche builds out there, but generally perceived as weak. But we're changing
You
him,
could high
especially
roll
because if you
high
hit
for
him
him, but
early,
yeah,
he's really bad. It's like, ooh, spread out a bunch of damage to no one. Who cares? Hitting 5 targets
fair.
lightly, not as great. So we're lowering it to 4 targets, but then letting him hit those 4 targets harder, right? So he might actually be able to kill people with his spellcast. Cool. And if you hit 3-star, that's going to jump up to 6, hopefully helping 3-star Karthus actually kill a few things. So generally, this is meant to be perceived as a very light buff and allowing him to actually focus fire a couple targets down rather than just spreading out a bunch of useless damage, and hopefully makes him less dependent on KDA Akali. So hopefully we can see some Karthus stuff. This combined with the Executioner changes, maybe Karthus becomes a carry.
I will try not to pause too much more on the forecast. This video is already getting long enough, and more videos already 46 minutes, even at 1.5 times. Okay, I put out 1.5 times as heads up, but I got to. Okay, Karthus has been in a mixed bag. Like he was strong and then he wasn't. He's some still niche builds. I'm seeing a few pentakill buffs so far and huge executioner buffs. Now I don't know how well that entirely works with Karthus with the crit damage. I'd have to think about it even more. Or smarter people have to figure out the math more than me. If it's just a slight buff, I'm fine with it. I think a slight buff is exactly what Karthus needs. I think he needs like a 10% damage increase, while Ari needs like a 30% damage decrease. Right? If you equal those out, I think they would be kind of on the same level. So I'm excited to see that. And I can see right here that Viego also has some buffs. So again, another pentakill buff. I'm saying pentakill with Mordekaiser buff. You have Viego buff, Karthus buff, and they had an Olaf buff. That's 4 pentakills right there. Oh no, Kale. There's 5 pentakill. Oh, pentakill's going crazy. It's going crazy.
Uh,
I call it now. Pentakill is going to be maybe one of the strongest verticals. Just gonna throw it out there.
Twisted Fate, very small buff to Twisted Fate, 5 damage, mostly a buff to TF1 if anything. But the bigger buff here is that his attack speed ratio was kind of laughably bad. You would look at his tooltip and be like, oh, he scales off attack speed.
Yeah.
Disco and Ginsu's are great for him. They weren't. They were a trap. You should not
Yeah.
be using Ginsu's or Disco on him. They were pointless. We're fixing that.
Yeah.
Now, we're doubled it basically, so he'll actually scale okay with attack speed. If you want to run a Ginsu's Twisted Fate with Disco, I've seen that 21 card spell go all the way up to like 36 cards now. So hopefully that allows you to have more interesting itemization on Twisted Fate and actually take advantage of his trait. Cool. Viego, really small buff here. I didn't want to overbuff all of Pentakill because it feels like every Pentakill is getting a buff, but Viego is kind of one of the weaker 4.
Every pentakill is getting buff. The only one that you've neglected to say anything for is York so far. But literally every other pentakill has gotten a buff. So what do you just funny. Anyway.
Thoughts. We're letting him do more damage with his dive. The idea here is if he does more damage, you can build more defensive stuff. So stuff like Titan plus BT plus Sterix might be
or just more damage.
To do a lot of damage and go repeat.
Or just more damage, Mort.
And then finally, Zac. Zac is getting a few more buffs here. A, to make up for some of the EDM changes, and B, just to make Zac actually comparable to someone like Set. Because right now, if you have a 2-star Set and a 2-star Zac, you're probably playing the Set. So hopefully that changes here. 10 less mana, 10 more armor and MR, and a little bit of extra heal. We always have to be careful with the spell heal, though, because if you sample Zac, all the other EDM people heal also, which can get really annoying. But we'll keep an eye on it. So, Zac buffs.
Okay, talk over the Forest Cross real quick. Twisted Fate, I really like this change, but I do think I'm spoiler. I think Mort, I saw him put out something saying that there were some changes, and I know that I'm pretty sure I saw TF's change was on there. So I think they actually reverted this, which is kind of unfortunate. Because TF, I think, needed a little bit of love. But, we still have good disco buffs, and, Ari's coming down a little bit. So maybe it might be fine if they reverted the buffs. Viego, not the most amount of increase in AD, and I think actually the way to go is to go more AD for him to get that one big burst and then start autoing like crazy. I think Pentakill is gonna. I'm gonna say it. I think Pentakill is gonna go crazy. And I think the way you play Pentakill is you're going to play whatever headliner Pentakill you will get, and then you splash in their other traits. So Karthus, you go Executioner. Viego, you're going to go Edgelord. Uh, Mordekaiser, you might actually go Sentinel, and you just have a strong, tanky ass front line that don't die. That's where I think might go to it. Kale, maybe even. He was mentioning something about some dish soap, having some Kale games. Don't know much about that, but maybe. So anyway, I think Pentakill is going to be you go 5 Pentakill and then you go 7. You have 2 other traits, and one of them is going to be your headliners. That's just the way I look at it. EDM Zac, say the spell heal is something to look out for. You increase it by 20 on level 1 and 10 by level 2. Don't think it's something to really worry about. I don't know how EDM's going to look. They really nerfed 5 EDM with the reduction from 2 seconds to 1 second. So I don't know. I don't think EDM is going to be that great.
Lucian. So Lucian, I want to call out here. We've obviously seen the feedback around Lucian that he feels like a 2 cost and isn't very good. So we are buffing his AD ratios. Now I've gone on record as saying the attack speed bug wasn't that impactful. And in most cases I was right, but I was wrong in one case, and I want to call that out. If you can get him a lot of attack speed, he actually scales up pretty well with it. So this means like 4 rapid fire Lucian pretty good. Ginsu's actually not the worst item on Lucian. And when you get him up to like 4.0 attack speed now, it looks pretty cool. He's just like yes, that was a sound effect. Enjoy that. So hopefully this makes Lucian feel like a 5 cost.
I love you more.
Cool. But yeah, also I like the fact that now there's a Ginsu's holder in the late game that isn't Sona. So Ginsu's Lucian kind of an option as well. But Lucian should be better. Cool.
Yeah, obviously 5 costs we're gonna stop to. Okay, Lucian. There's been so many weird bugs to this attack speed that it's hard to even gauge what's actually good and not good on him. It's been too much. I will say that what he said there at the end there is I wholeheartedly agree with. I want there to be a Ginsu's holder that isn't Sona. Don't get me wrong. I think Sona is cool because she doesn't do a lot herself. She essentially just helps her team do a lot. Super, super cool. But the fact that the Ginsu's that's supposed to be a ramping attack speed, there's no 5 cost that can really work well with it. I like that he's talked about that. I think that's cool, and I don't really want Sona to be this person that is in every single comp and you just spam Ginsu's on her and she just casts like crazy. I'm talking about Sony, he hasn't even talked about it yet, but just talking about, I had to bring up the Lucian where he's talking about how they wanted to have a Ginsu's holder. To be honest, I can't even comment on Lucian as a whole though because there's been so many bugs to them. It's hard to know how well he's going to be. If it's actually fixed, then cool, and I'm excited to see him.
Cool. Kiana is the best 5 cost in the game because once you get her, not only does she do a ton of damage, she generates a ton of item value in fights and spawns more items. That's pretty good. And
she does literally everything. The only thing she doesn't do is she does everything actually. She does a CC, she does damage, and she gives you items. I mean, what else would you want? And then when she dies, if she dies, she's a crowd diver. So if you had a crowd diver comp 6/6, after she decided to get you 3 items, she did a shit ton of damage to somebody. Anyway, Kiana is definitely. I wouldn't say she's the best 5 cost. I think Sona's equitable when it comes to the Sona comp and everything. But I understand as a solo by herself, Quinoa is the best on her own. As the rest of the 5 costs, I think Sona competes with the best.
We'll keep it good, but maybe not quite as good. Kiana 2 will now only generate 1 item instead of 2. You don't really need 2 Warmogs every time she casts.
No.
That's a little much.
No, you don't.
And we're lowering the damage a little bit, especially on the itemless one. If you were hitting an itemless champion with Kiana, she was one-shotting them really hard with extra true damage, so she didn't need that much. Honestly, this nerf it looks big, but it's pretty light. From what we've seen on PvE, Kiana's still insane. She still generates a bunch of items.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that much different.
I don't think it's going to remove Kiana from the meta, but she will be down in power.
That's good.
Sona, to quote Dish Soap, you don't pretend the game is balanced, you just click attack speed. Okay, cool.
Hold on.
Well, let's try to balance it a little better. So,
absolute facts. Not sure if you guys remember. It was heal before. It was heal and shield. Doesn't matter anything else. Doesn't matter what comp you're playing. You go heal and shield every single time. And you know what you still build on her? A Ginsu's. Oh, they nerfed that. You know what they go to now? Attack speed. You know you still build on her? A Ginsu's. So Kiana, I understand. That's why I put it up. Kiana might be the best 5 cost by herself, and she does add some to the team with some CC and some items. Sona has just been such a staple because of how Sona works. And they nerfed the heal, and then they found the attack speed. You know what they're doing? They're buffing the heal again. And they're buffing the AP. I still don't think at the moment you're probably going to go AP, but they're buffing the heal again. Sona's always going to be good. And I don't think the attack speed is actually that bad because you're still going to build against use and you're still going to just shit out fucking autos like you are. You just are. Excuse my French, but you are. So anyway, I think Sona as a whole is a cool concept. She's always going to be really strong. It's just funny that they nerfed attack speed, and the guy's dish up even said, you don't even have to think about it. You just go attack speed, and that's how it was for the heal. You don't even think about it. You just went heal. So kind of shows true when you have options, and there's always a clear one.
Attack speed's going down a little bit. You'll get less attack speed per auto and less attack speed, per once she casts. But we're going to buff the heal form. The heal will do more per auto, and the damage form giving more AP per auto. So those two forms should be a little bit better. Hopefully this gets it to closer to a decision. Again, we're not trying to delete the attack speed one or anything like that, but we are trying to get Sona to a point where
I don't think it's gonna.
No,
I don't think it's gonna
assume attack speed. And finally, Ziggs, probably one of the bigger buffs here as well. But Ziggs, when that scaling bomb went from 2 to 1, it kind of gutted him a bit. He ended up being way too weak.
He
So
went.
giving him some
My
attack
boy
speed
went
back,
down.
getting that hyper pop buff, and those small bombs are going to go up in damage quite a bit here. This is a big buff to those small bomb damage. It's still only scaling 1 per cast,
20, 30.
but Ziggs can actually output the damage now and be a 5 cost. So hopefully the 5 cost balance ends up in a pretty good spot here.
Pause briefly, just mention again. Lucian, too hard to say, too many bugs, but hopefully it gets figured out. I like the quinoa, they nerfed her, but I'll say this as a whole. I don't want them to gut anything that's super strong. I want everything to be good and viable, and I want it to be about playing the right comp and what you're hitting and feeling good to play the comp you're playing. I'm going to say that. So I like the quinoa nerfs, not super bad, but still good. Sona, same thing. I'm good to see my boy Ziggs getting some love after they gutted him. So overall, happy.
All right, headliners. I'll go through this quick. Evelyn headliner, 5 AP buff. Olaf headliner, 5 armor and MR buff. Tom Kench headliner, 75 HP buff. Tarek headliner, 50 HP buff. Vi headliner, 100 HP buff, 5 AD nerf. She doesn't really need more AD. She's already got that through Punk. But the extra flat HP will make her better in the early game. Yasuo, this is another one. I think this is a bigger nerf than people realize, but minus 5% Omnivamp, but plus 100 health. So now you're going to actually need to build an Omnivamp item on him, or 2 even, to let him go infinite. But he's not going to get that built in through the trait. Aphelios 5% AD buff. Garen 50 HP nerf. As we saw, that just went back into the champion, so Garen's kind of neutral. Gnar, this is a big one. The jump slightly delayed to after initial enemy targeting. There were times where it was possible for Gnar to jump so fast that he was just the first target and would die. Not anymore. It's been fixed. Gragas, 3% more damage on the headliner. Nico, this is one of my favorite changes. Nico used to give 20 mana to ally. Now it'll give 40. So this is pretty cool if you want like a headliner Nico to give mana to somebody else. Also, I know, I'm sure Leduc's going to create some crazy comp where you run like 4 Nikos with the prismatic augment that gives them all this ability, but should be fun. That's kind of the point. Have fun. Zac headliner, realistically, very few people playing Zac headliner. 100 more HP, 5 more AP. And then Kayn was another headliner that really just wasn't benefiting enough. The increased rewards are cool, but he didn't have much extra power to get those increased rewards, so we're giving him 5 more AP. So
overall, I don't think much of these headliner bonuses. The 5%, I realize now that I'm talking about the Yasuo, people have already in chat talked about it, and I understand that YouTube maybe same thing. The Omnivamp came from his headliner, not from Bling. Bling just gives you execute. I understand. I'm sorry. I forgot there's a lot of things, a lot of champions. But I don't think 5% or the 5% difference is that much. I think it is substantial compared to the rest of them, but I don't think it's I mean, when you add a 50% increase to his damage baseline, I think it's fine. I think it's going to be fine.
Lots of light adjustments here, mostly buffs. Augments, Cybernetic Bulk 1, 2, and 3, a little too good for just how easy they are to play and how good they always are, so those are going down 10%. On the silver side of things, Best Friends 1 gets 2 more armor and MR, or armor, MR, and attack speed. No MR. Attack speed and armor. Consistency, because of the streak changes, this augment is terrible, and we don't need you to pick a terrible choice, and we all don't need to load up tactics.tools Wednesday morning and see a 33% top 4 augment or something.
That's fair.
Nope, it's disabled. Help is on the way, a little too good for a silver, delaying it 2 turns. Rolling for days, +1 reroll, and now can show up on 4-2 if you really need some rerolls. Stationary support, 1 more extra turn, small nerf. Crash test dummies, this augment, still way too good, no matter how much you nerf the dummy. Stun duration going down to 1.25 seconds. It's still a ton of extra frontline. I still think this augment's going to be great, just a little less stun. Execution or exposed weakness, 40% shred and sunder was way too good. This augment, especially if you got it with like the twin comp with Twitch and Vex, too good. Nerfing it to the standard 30%. Extended play gets buffed, where now you get 2 gold whenever a punk is 2-starred. Should help if you want to play punk reroll. Heroic grab bag, a little weak, 2 extra gold. Little buddies, a little too good. 15 less health per buddy now, so nerf to that augment. Ramping rhythm, 1 extra starting stack. Hopefully this makes rapid fire a lot more fun. I think starting with 4 stacks can be pretty insane actually. So we'll see if we see some ramping rhythm comps.
Overall, for augments, nothing crazy to think of. I like the fact that they thought ahead of time. They're changing the streak, their streak changes, and then they're taking away consistency for it. I'm glad they do that stuff. Um, Overall, with augments, nothing much to talk about. I think crash test dummies are still going to be good, even 1.25 seconds. It's still going to be really good. Yeah, not much to talk on with that.
Return on investment, only 16 rerolls now instead of 18. So if you want that Tactician's Crown from return on investment, you can play that.
Pretty good.
Submit to the Pit. This was a good augment, but it was really weird because it was mostly around enemies
Yeah.
surrounding you and very unintuitive.
Yeah.
Now it's going to play like Keepers, where it's just as long as you start near allies at the start of combat, gain all those stats. Should be easier to use now is kind of the goal here. Teaming up 2. This
Let me think about that for a second. So this stat, for those of you who don't know, they got essentially pretty much 5 of increase every stat, where per enemy that was nearby them, if I'm correct. And now it's allies. I'm trying to think. What I don't know, and somebody will probably tell me, they're in chat or on YouTube, in the comments, that if it was for the rest of combat when that started, or if there's a time duration on the buff so you get the stats. Because my thought is that if it's not, you could start this and put your headliner in the middle, and you could do the whole honeycomb formation, and put your headliner in the middle. That is a mosher, and if it lasts for the end of combat, you could instantly get 2, 4, 5, 6. So you get 6 stacks instantly when you hit with 7. Yeah, 7 in the middle. So that would give you immediately 18 AD, 18 AP, if that's how it all works. It's a stats 5 to 3. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. So it's just 5 of everything, 5% or 5 flat. So that's pretty strong if you think about that. So that's actually really good buff, especially. Yeah, I think I like it a lot.
augment, if you could get this augment at 3-2, was insane, especially if you spiked a really good 4 cost. Now this augment only shows up on 4-2. 3's a crowd, a little
Fair.
too good still, minus 5 HP. Binary airdrop. This does not change anything. It now just actually says it's a recommended item. A lot of confusion around if it was random or recommended. It's not random. It's recommended. Cool.
Yeah.
Tiniest Titan Plus, 7 extra gold. Cool. So yeah, not a ton in the augment space.
Yeah,
Minor
not
stuff
much.
There.
I think.
All right, items. This is probably a big batch of changes you want to pay attention to. Right
I think the Mosher is probably the biggest one out of there, and I think it's actually going to create some comps if you get it. Genuinely, I think that's a really crazy reroll comp there.
Now, I think there are items that people build pretty clearly, pretty often, blue buff, red buff, stuff like that, i.e. And then there are
I'm trying not to look at it while I talk about this. I think the items that need to be changed in the game right now. I don't know if blue buff really needs to be changed. They change it to be good, but RA is just such a big proprietor of it that they're probably going to nerf it. I think Dragon's Claw is really good situationally, but outside of certain situations, I don't think it's that good. So I'd like to see maybe some buffs. I'd love to see some Ionic Spark buffs. That's one of my favorite items that I've used to always play, like old Katarina or essentially champions that could jump around, old Echo that could jump around and cause the Ionic Spark to hit. I think that let's see. Well, I think a lot of the items outside of that are pretty good. I think Merlin is really lackluster. I think I've always thought that foundationally that is a flawed item in TFT. I can go into depth why, but that's that. And I think there are some other random items that probably could be buffed, but I think the biggest ones that probably I'm going to see or might want to see is blue buff. I'd like to see some buffs for some of the defensive items, and for some offensive items, I'd like to see some changes to either Nomicon, to Hurricane. I know Hurricane's good because it has the most attack speed, but I still like to maybe it to apply on hit effects again. That's just me. But Hurricane and yeah, I could go on and on about what I think, but I just wanted to throw out myself before I looked it up. So now I'm going to look. Listen to Daddy.
Pros would tell
Whoa,
you,
sorry,
build
did not mean to say that. I know something like that.
We're going to buff a lot of the terrible ones here to get them along lines. So Adaptive Helm gets 5 more armor and MR in the front line, 5 more AP in the back line, and Radiant buff to match.
That's good.
Archangels gives 5 more AP.
Again, just think about this. Adaptive Helm is one of those items that's a little bit different compared to most when it comes to Radiant, because you'll get both benefits. So if you get a Radiant Adaptive Helm, you'll get the MR and armor plus the AP, right? So think of it that way. Oh no, it says Radiant. That must be a bug. or not a bug, a miss thing, because Radiant gives you both regardless of your starting position, if I'm correct, and they're only showing here that they're buffing the Radiant armor and MR. So I'm hoping it's just they forgot to add in the AP, because it'd be weird they don't get extra AP. But
AP
anyway,
every 5 seconds, so Archangels gets a buff. Cool, and it's Radiant. Bloodthirster. Now we saw success
I don't
with
know if
Blue
Archangels
Buff
need
when
a
we added
buff.
AD to it. We'll probably do a little bit more of that here and there.
Well, no.
Bloodthirster now
Oh,
grants 15 AP. That is less than the AD it normally gives. But if you want to go Bloodthirster Kane, for example, great, you'll get some AP from it. Cool.
sorry. I'm gonna go on a quick rant right here. I know we just hit an hour too. Great. This is a great time to start a rant. If you also, first and foremost, if you've been here for this long, thank you very much. Chat, thank you for bearing with me. I love going and deep diving stuff. You know that. And then anyone watching anywhere else, appreciate you. You know, subscribe, like if you haven't. I usually do stuff. I speak a lot. I like to talk a lot. I love to hear you guys' thoughts. So make sure you put them down in the comments below. It's something that I just love. I just love talking and picking people's brains and talking the way my brain works and everything. Right, Bloodthirster. The reason why I'm really excited about this is I love them adding AP items, AP to other items. So when they added AD to blue buff, I was super hyped for it. When they added, and now they're adding AP to Bloodthirster, super hyped about it. I can go on for a long time about why, but I think the way inherently that TFT is designed is they try to balance things around giving them AP or AD scalings. So, for instance, the one that comes to mind very quickly is MF. MF's actual damage ability scales off of AD. Her attack speed scales off of the AP, right? And her attack speed is if it kills the front target with the first shot, it gets the attack speed. So, giving AP and AD to blue buff, and you say you want to put it on MF, now she actually gets the benefits of both. Now, Bloodthirster can do the same thing. One that comes to mind to me is like Ribbon. I think Ribbon has some AP scaling on it, so she's going to be able to get AP as well. It's just flat out 15 extra AP. It's not not getting rid of anything. You just get extra AP, so you get extra whatever your ability scales off of AP to yourself. It's not taking away any AD, and it just gives you more. And I like that. I like that it gives a little bit extra for still building the same item, because it's also flexible now too, right? You could potentially, like Mordekaiser, you could potentially put a Bloodthirster on Mordekaiser, and you get the AP, plus you get the shield, plus you get the little AD, and it all can work together. So I really like it. Anyway, I could go much more in depth about it, but I won't spare the video already being very long. Again, I appreciate you if you're still here. Anyway, let's get back to it.
Radiant also does the same thing. Blue buff, very tiny nerf here. The damage goes down to 8%. The blue buff versus Shojin comparisons is a little not favorable for Shojin, but we want to be careful that a lot of its stats are being propped up by Ahri, so we don't want to over nerf this.
Sorry, pause again. I know we just talked about it. Quickly on blue buff and Shojin. Funny enough, if you recall to the changes prior when they nerfed Shojin, it was because the disparity between blue buff and Shojin wasn't good enough, right? That was what Mort was talking about, if I'm correct. On literally the last patch rundown was that Shojin got buffed or nerfed because it was the auto take, and blue buff was you weren't seeing it, and now it's the kind of flip is what he's saying. I think it's really unique because Shojin was typically Shojin wasn't really it was more of an AD thing, and blue buff was always the AP thing, and now there's a fine line between the two, it seems, and I think finding the good middle ground for them is important. I think that's what they're trying to do.
Small nerf. Dragon's Claw, 5% HP becomes 10% HP. This is a pretty big amount of HP that you can get that scales late game. A 3-star set with a Dragon's Claw now. Whew, it's going to be dangerous.
I love that.
So hopefully Dragon's Claw, not a terrible item to build anymore. Even Shroud, 5 more armor and MR. This one might be contentious because I think a lot of people are like, even Shroud's built all the time. But we were seeing in our data it looked pretty low, and 5 more armor and MR is not going to hurt it in the early game, so it should be fine.
I'll talk about even Shroud. I think it's a really interesting and unique item to the game, and I like it. People are saying this is contentious. If he's being true, I'm sorry. Why? Yes, it's being built a lot because it gives the shred. You're getting 5 more armor and MR. It doesn't change the way. The thing that you're upset about is not being changed, right? Your thing that you have a potential problem with is the same thing, and it gives a sender, and now it's just giving a little extra AD or armor and MR. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Yeah, I just had to say that.
Gargoyle Stoneplate now grants 100 HP, so
it actually might be good.
It won't be as bad. 100 HP plus its stats should be fine. Radiant also grants 250 HP and 20 more armor and MR, because Radiant Gargoyle Stoneplate now doesn't have to be balanced around Demacia and Palio, so we can get that back up to other Radiant items. Hextech Gunblade, 5 more AD and AP. and then the Radiant gets a bunch more to make it a bit more. You can put it on anybody, so Radiant Gunblade better. Ionic Spark, this is probably one of the biggest buffs here, but Ionic Spark is meant to be an item that goes on a tank, but it doesn't really help you tank that much. 200 flat health, that's a big buff. It's a good
I
item now. 400 health for the Radiant version. Cool.
I'll wait for a second. I'll
Jewel
finish
Gauntlet,
Jewel
5 more
Gauntlet.
AP, 10 more Radiant buffs.
Nope. Go back. Go back. Gunblade. I love Gunblade. I can't. I've already made some analogies to League of Legends. I love League. I that's what I played a lot. It's got me into TFT. Anyway, Gunblade is an item that I've always loved, and I love when they brought it into TFT. Love to see it get some love. I think it's a really unique and fun item. Ionic Spark. I already said it. If you give me some Declaw and Ionic Spark buffs, I'm gonna be a happy boy. And they gave Ionic Spark some 200 HP. That's so good. Oh, I'm gonna be slamming Ionic Spark. Goodbye, Declaw. I'm sorry. Don't care. Ionic Spark who? Anyway, Jewel Claw, that's fine. I'm sorry. I'm just really excited about Ionic Spark.
Radiant version. Cool. Jewel Gauntlet, 5 more AP, 10 more Radiant buffs. Okay, here's a big one. Morellonomicon, widely considered the why would you build this instead of red buff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now comes with 15% attack speed.
Also, he's very neglecting. I'll say it afterwards, but he's very neglecting another huge item.
This is a buff, right? Like now you'll be able. So you could use this instead of Nashers. It's just general attack speed if you need the burn. So this should make it a lot more comparable to things like Nashers if you want to build that and get that burn. Cool.
No, so I think inherently, one of the biggest issues with Nomicon. I've had this for a long time. So another small tangent. Sorry, you're watching this. You chose to listen to the tangent. So when TFT first came out, they took a lot of the items from the game and tried to bring it into TFT, right? Nomicon being one of those. Nomicon in game has some health and it has a lot of AP and it has a burn. Always, right? That's what it does. But it has a lot of AP actually. A lot of people don't realize that, but it has like 80 AP. I think it might be 70 right now. It changes, but it's a high AP item. Nomicon in TFT is not a AP carry item. You use it for the burn. You would never go for the burn with Nomicon when you have options like Sunfire Cape. And Sunfire Cape and Nomicon used to be the only 2 burn items. And you still always want Sunfire Cape because it gives you health, armor, and a burn. Everything that your frontline needs and wants. Then they introduced the Blistering Strikes that gives your team wide, and then now there's red buff. There's and I still 100% don't believe there's any reason to build Morello. I don't think it compares with Nashor's Tooth. I don't think it's something that will actually be built ever still. I think it inherently needs to be changed, or it needs to the recipe needs to be changed, or need to change just the flat amount of AP it gives, or maybe make the burn on Nomicon itself be way more than your other ones, because then it'll be more of a dot kind of item build than it is just a burn with Grievous Wounds. Anyway, that's how I feel about Nomicon. I don't think this does much for it. Unfortunately, I love the item as a whole. I build it on a lot of people in the league, but you're not seeing me build this in TFT.
Another big one here, Rabadon's Death Cap. The problem with Rabadon's Death Cap is if you had AP, you never wanted this item.
Mm-hmm.
So we're changing that. It'll lose 10 AP, but gain 12% damage. This is much more multiplicative, so things like Spellweavers should want Death Cap now. When someone saw this, they're like, man, this will be best in slot on casters now. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the point. It's the AP item. You put it on casters. Good. So Radiant gets matched also. This Radiant version with 50% damage might be a little bonkers. We'll see. So, but yeah, Death Cap. Cool.
So, sorry, pause again. I'm going to explain. So, Death Cap, same thing. They brought something in from League, right? Some of these, because some of the items aren't really it, or they've done some big iterations. Death Cap, they never really made it. Death Cap in League, you always built because it multiplicatively increased. I can't ever say that word. Don't make fun of me. Increased your AP. It just gave you 8% bonus damage. That's not it. And I actually don't know if this is still fully it. The 50% might be crazy just because it's such a huge number for the Radiant. But I'm not sure this still even does it entirely. I kind of have to check the numbers, but I'm glad that seeing to take Ravs the way that they, it is in League, right? If that's kind of their inspiration stuff, they should be kind of trying it that way versus not. I think this is a good change.
Red buff, another small nerf to match blue buff. Damage goes from 8% to 6%. The Radiant one, though, loses 10% attack speed. and 2% damage as well. Radiant was really good. Radiant red buff was the best item in the game, other than
Yeah.
True Damage Emblem, which we'll get to in a second. Also, that's a typo, so we'll get to that. Radiant.
I'm going to say this just real quickly. Red buff. I'm been very interested and a little confused on the item ever since it came out. It's 2 bows, and it gives you just flat bonus damage and a bunch of attack speed and healing cut. And yeah, right. I don't know what. It's just interesting. It's just a interesting item to come to the game in a way the way it did. The build components towards it, and everything. I just I'm not sure how I've ever felt about it. I mean, it took away rapid fire cannon, which made your attacks never miss, which doesn't matter anymore because TOD doesn't really have the dodge thing. But I'm just saying, as a whole, I think the item is. I'm not sure how I still feel about it. I don't know if I love that it's a bunch of attack speed and it just gives you flat bonus damage, and it's such a um, compounding item compared to like you compare that to Morellonomicon. You put Nomicon on your caster, you get a little bit AP, you get a little bit of health, and then you do the burn and healing cut. Right, red buff, you get a shit ton of attack speed on your AD or your AP, which even attack speed helps with APs because it helps you cast faster. You get a flat damage bonus, not just an AP increase. You get a flat damage bonus, and then you also do like it doesn't really compare, and that's kind of where I fall into it.
Radiant Crown Guard, 10% more starting shield. Radiant
Fine.
Steadfast Heart, more DR. True Damage Emblem, this should say no longer has a bling bonus. Ignore the base armor and MR. I can't type.
I'm sorry, what? No longer bling bonus. No longer 10% increased damage. What? Whoa, that's a lot. Ooh. I'm gonna sit on that one. Initial thoughts. Don't know how I feel because why would you ever build it if it just gives you armor and MR and you get nothing else from it? I don't know if you can get a bling. If you don't get any kind of bling bonus, I don't know if I love it because the whole idea of true damage. Oh yes, you still will do the actual true damage, but it's also fun to get the bling bonus. And the fact that you don't get anything, I would have maybe found like a 5%. I don't know. Just my thoughts.
True Damage
First
Emblem
off.
is losing its bling bonus. It's losing its 10% damage. So True Damage Emblem will go down in power a lot. That item is too good.
Yeah, a
Shift power
lot.
too much. Nerfed. Great. Ignore the
Uh,
bad typing. Bad Mort. All right, now we have small stuff. Small stuff is changes that we don't expect to change the meta, but do need to happen. So, first off, we have the prismatic traits 10 KDA, 10 pentakill, 9 true damage. These traits are going to happen more, right? With the spatula portal, with the wandering trainer portal, with different portals like that. They're going to happen more. Because they're going to happen more, they can't quite be as good. So, each of them is getting a small nerf here. They are still meant to be very, very good, but maybe it'll actually be a little closer now in certain fights. So, they're each going down a little bit here. I think 10 KDA gets the biggest of the nerfs. Pentakill, small nerf, 9 true damage, bit of a nerf there. Country, again, with the emblem being craftable, we wanted to nerf it a little. That being said, it's not like we're seeing 7 country dominate the meta right now or anything. So 5 armor and MR off Hecarim, and then 10 armor and MR off at 7. So nothing crazy. KDA, a little too good at 3, a little mediocre at 7. 3 goes from 10 to 9, 7 goes from 22 to 24. Minor. And Zig's superfan item is going from Archangels to Spear of Shojin, intended to be a buff if you ever run superfan Ziggs. Cool.
I think that's the biggest one, but
Champion
that's
side, Corki.
very many.
Corki's spell is getting a bit of a nerf. Again, this is mostly compensation for the 8-bit buff, meant to be neutral for Corki. Maybe even a little bit of a buff at like 4 8-bit. Evelyn, another champion, not really that exciting.
Depending on how many
gets a little bit more
stacks.
attack speed when she spell casts. Hopefully lets her keep going and be pretty strong in the early game. Cool.
That's fair.
Cassante, little too good for also being a heart seal unit. It's gonna
You go
lose 5% of
Cassante
his
headline
spell
every
DR.
time.
From what we've seen on PB, he's still good. Maybe just dies a little quicker. Cool. Lilia, 10 less mana, cast a little quicker, cast a little more often. Not going to change Lilia dramatically.
Yeah.
Jax, yes, he got the EDM nerf, but it wasn't quite enough. We gave him the tiniest spell nerf here. This is like slap on the wrist.
Like, why would you do that?
Like
okay.
Touch on the wrist.
Fair.
230 base down to 220 base. So just putting him down. Again, we don't need him to be the best EDM champion. He should still be good, should still be playable. Nothing crazy. Pantheon, on the other hand, gets a little bit more DR, so trying to help Punk a little bit here. So that should help him.
Damage reduction
as well. So if you want to put like a crown guard on Pantheon, it'll be pretty good. Twitch. This is a confusing one, but Twitch's proportions were a little weird in that he really scaled well with like crit and even AP. So we're trying to change that so that he really benefits from Punk and a little less from just like generic stuff. So his spell is going to get higher AD ratio, but less secondary explosions, and the secondary explosions are the things that scale off AP. So there should be a buff to deep Punk Twitch.
I'll say the reason why I don't know how much of a buff it is because the 4 second explosion that has to like actually look at it, but what made Twitch even remotely viable was his AoE that he provided. And if you're getting rid of that, I don't know how much a 25% increase to your spell AD does. I could be wrong with the punk. There's a lot of punk kind of some buffs in here for that with some augments with Vi, Pantheon, and Twitch and Executioner. So maybe there's a world where this actually works really well because punk gives you a bunch of AD, to be fair. But I worry because you're just reducing his AoE. I almost maybe would have maybe reduce it to like 5 if you want to reduce it, and then maybe reduce the AP ratio if you're doing that. I don't know. That's kind of where I would go versus just making it from 6 to 4. That is um that's a 1/3. That's a 33% decrease. So
The goal here.
yeah,
Lulu, very tiny nerf here, or buff. Words are hard. Very tiny buff here to make Lulu a little bit more playable. It's very tiny. You got to be careful with hyper
plus
pop
with
being
hyper
buffed
pop,
here,
yeah,
but super tiny.
and spell
Misfortune,
weaver
same
got a
thing.
buff.
Spell hits a tiny bit harder. Again, very light.
That's
That's why they're
fair.
small. Nico gets a little bit more shield value from an ally.
These
If
are
you want to run 3-star Nico with a 3-star Kaisa,
okay.
cool. You'll get 1%
5 to
more of their health.
6.
Cool. Caitlyn. This ended up actually being, again,
Hmm.
neutral. The goal here was to nerf her spell AD a little bit to compensate for 8-bit, and then buff the AP ratio a little bit in case you had things like Ginsu's, that she could actually take advantage of a little bit of that AP. But overall, meant to be about neutral for Caitlyn. Poppy, very tiny nerf to the heal. Poppy is kind of the best tank when you get it going. Very tiny nerf. Thresh, 50 HP buff, just to put him comparable to some of these other 4-cost tanks. Very minor.
Sorry, I'm just gonna touch on this, Caitlyn. I'm trying to think about this real quick. Reduce the spell AD by a decent margin, but they're saying because the 8-bit buffs, which was a 1.5 per stack of AD. So the way I look at it, and again, I'm just trying to do quick math real quick. If you just built pure AD, I think it's actually overall a net nerf because I think that the numbers here are less than what you would get from 8-bit. Like the if that's a word, compensatory, whatever the fuck the word is. From 8-bit, I think that it's still technically a nerf to your AD. If you just build AD, the spell AP though, if you were to build a Ginzu's, I also a blue buff come to mind. I think one of Caitlyn's biggest flaws is she takes forever to cast, like to be able to cast, and then she also has an aggravatingly long cast time. Something that's literally lost me fights, and I love it. I talked about it earlier, but it's still something that I have some struggles with. The cast time is so long. So all let's say is that I think putting blue buff on her is maybe not the craziest idea because it also does give AP. You get the AD and you get to cast quicker. I think that's something that might become a thing. Is like you go Shojin, you might go Shojin blue buff, Ginsu's Caitlyn just because you want to be able to cast faster with the 8-bit buffs. You'll still have some good AD to it. Something to think about. Interesting.
50 HP buff, just to put him comparable to some of these other 4-cost tanks.
Fair.
Very minor. And then bug fixes. Endless Hordes will no longer delete items from training dummies. Cool. Fixed a bug where Karthus could target untargetable objects like Zed clones. That's a buff to Karthus. And then probably the biggest one that will hopefully help all of our double up and hyper roll players. Craftable emblems will no longer roll into abyssal masks from Pandora's items or reforgers in double up and hyper roll.
Yeah, that's
definitely
rough.
The most reported bug. Apologize for that. Now you might be wondering why not more bug fixes. We just got back from break with a day to lock the patch. Hopefully we'll get some more bug fixes for you next patch. But this is what you get for now. And yeah, so all right, so there you go. Like I said, pretty sizable patch, pretty big.
We'll finish it off and then
should be fun. Hopefully opens up a lot more lines.
Good final thoughts.
If anything changes between now and Wednesday, I'll let you know. Otherwise, that's about it. So that's gonna do it for me this time. The words are hard. That's gonna do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.
First and foremost, before I go into my full thoughts, please go watch the video yourself. Obviously, like it, subscribe to Mort. Tell him you love him. He's great. He's probably one of the best game developers out there right now. Transparent. He's a real human. I just so much respect for the guy. So please go do that. I'm going to go through. I know it's already a very long video. Again, thank you again if you're watching. This is who I am. So if you're watching this, you probably like this. So, but again, still thank you. I'm going to go over things that I think are really, really worth talking about. So the things that come to mind first and foremost is the streaks. Streaks completely changing, so you can no longer hit a 2 loss streak and win streak. Very, very big. I think that is a bigger impact than we really know, and we won't really see the implications till we actually play it ourselves. Um, ties are they shouldn't be that big of a deal intrinsically because there shouldn't be any open forwarding. Hopefully, much more. But I'm glad that it's here because it kind of prevents that from happening. Um, headliners, I think it's good. It doesn't really change the way it plays. It just, I guess it does, but it more than anything, it's a lot more transparent now in how it works. The jazz emblem is fine. To country now, it's what it is. Moving on. Portals, don't really care too much. Don't want to talk too much on that. Traits, 8-bit. I think it's interesting. I think it's going to be good. You get a 1.5% AD per stack increase at 4, which you would play at 4 because you only get a 0.5 at 2. I still don't think you're going to chase 6. If you get it, you get it kind of thing. And you slam it on like a Viego if you're going to Riven comp. Traits outside of that, I think executioner the 200% is bonkers to me. We're gonna have to really see what that looks like because that is just absolutely bonkers. I think executioner 6 is gonna be crazy. I think even 4 is gonna be crazy. Samira reroll comp's already good. There's already some comps playing around Twitch with like double Hodge in the front with executioner. I think executioner is gonna be really strong. We saw Karthus buffs in here. Overall, I think that's gonna be really good. Guardian is gonna be something that I look at with comps formulating because it did get buffed at 4. So it's a little bit better. 6, I don't think you're going to chase 6, but who knows? There might be something that pops up out of it. Hard Steel, the nerfs itself, I don't think is as worth mentioning as the race of stakes. I think the race of stakes is a really great change. It's a lot of fun. Remember, at the end of the games, guys, at the end of the day, guys, games are supposed to be fun. They just are. So I love they add some extra little flair, some funness to the game. But I think overall, Hearthstone's going to be still the way you play it. There's big buffs to Hyperpop. He even mentioned it, and I was thinking about it, like a double Lulu reroll comp, maybe something. Look, that's one of the traits to look out for. It might be a sleeper. I don't think Jazz going to be much of anything. Sentinel still going to be good. I think Spellweaver is going to be whatever. One cost champions, not much. I think maybe look out for an Olaf potentially because there are a lot of pentakill buffs. There's some other bruiser buffs. So as a whole, just not saying anything, but maybe look at him. The biggest one cost, there's 2 actually, I think, is this Tarek spell damage. I have to see how it looks. If it's 565 per auto, you get 2 when you cast a shield. That's crazy. That's a lot. If it's 565 between 2 autos, that's not as much. The 1.5%, so a 50% increase for Yasuo, really good because if you get this early on, say you get lucky and get the headliner version of him, you're going to be great. Even if you only get 1 or 2, like you get a 50% increase scaling essentially to your reroll comp. I think it's really good. I think you're going to see some Yasuo reroll comps. The do master himself, Bradley is going to be so good. Will always cast 3 damage dudes. If I'm reading this correctly, that means that every cast he will always give you 3 damage dudes. And he already does good damage. The damage wasn't the bad thing. It's just that it was inconsistent. But you're still your boy because you loved him. You want to never talk bad about him. But this just makes him better. Garen, I don't think it's going to do anything. Kragus, I don't think much. I think there is a lot of disco potential praise coming on, but I don't think this particular change does much. Kaisa, talked about it earlier. I think that her biggest flaw is not anything to do with the amount of damage she does or anything. It's she misses. Her targeting AI plus the enemy AI is just so terrible. I think that needs to be changed more than anything to actually make her worth like playing. Katarina, Kale. Don't care anything for Katarina. Apparently, there's some Kale comps going around. I personally am not going to care for much for Kale, but as you'll see later on, and you already saw a little bit previously, Pentakill is there's a lot of Pentakill buffs going around. And so Pentakill might be a whole, and so Kale might just be, because she's Pentakill, will be in comps, but I don't think that she's going to be carrying comps myself. 3 costs. Echo, much needed. I talked a little bit on this already, but he's a trait bot to no end. He provides a great AoE stun with some okay damage. I'm fine with the nerfs. I think he's an auto include in most comps, so it's fine. I think these Lux changes aren't going to do anything. And I think Mordekaiser, I already liked him as a headliner. I thought he was pretty sleeper, and they buffed the headliner, so I'm really great with that. 4 costs. Intrinsically, I don't think Ari they fix this. I think if you just wanted to not really try to change it all, I think you just reduce her damage. I don't think the attack speed does anything because once you cast Nashers, you just get a bunch of attack speed as it is. So the 0.05 you're losing doesn't really seem like it's much, in my opinion. I think intrinsically you either need to reframe how she is played, what her ability does, or you just need to just reduce your damage and maybe make her not something that you play that much. I just don't think it's because if she's bad, no one will play her because it's not fun to play a 1 cost carry that can't melt things. If she's good, then she melts every 1 cost. She melts everything, and then she's bad to play against. There's no in between when you come to a 1 cost carry. I've talked about this, and also the ideation behind Ari's ulti. Anyway, Karth is going to be pretty good, I think. Overall, it's kind of a buff. And you have a lot of pentakill buffs, and you have the crazy executioner buff. And I don't know the math enough. Someone smarter than me is going to be able to know it. With Karthus, with the executioner buffs, the 100% crit chance plus pentakill, I think Karthus is going to be a great 4 cost carry. TF, unfortunately, I believe Mort did actually tweet out saying that this is no longer a thing. This TF buff, so essentially disregard this. Another pentakill buff. I'm telling you, pentakill is going to be the way to go. You go pentakill, and then whatever headliner you get, you essentially splash it in. So if you get Viego, you go your Edgelord. If you get Karthus, you go your Executioner. If you go get Mordekaiser, you're going to go your Sentinel. That's how I feel. I don't think these Zac buffs are going to be anything, especially with the EDM nerfs. I didn't really touch on that. I guess I'll go back real quick and touch on that. Is it right here? Yeah, EDM. So essentially, EDM, they kind of nerfed it a lot. So the frequency was a big thing. When you hit 5, you went from every 2 seconds to 1 second kind of thing. And it's a 50% reduction, and it's a lot. And the Jax, which was the one that had the lowest space timer, that was like spammable. That's why you played him. He also got nerfed. So I just don't think EDM is going to be that much, even with Zac being buffed. The 5 cost, Lucian's been too broken with all these bugs to know exactly how good he is. I hope he's better now, and I hope they fix bugs, and I hope he's a good champion. Quinoa, I think she is good. Still, I think she's still going to be really good. Even with the nerfs, I think she was really strong as it was. Fine with the nerfs. Sona, if you know, you always put attack speed on her regardless of any game. Prior to even that, before they nerfed the heal, it was the heal regardless of anything. So I hope they're getting to a point where you actually choose what Sona's ulti is based off the comp you're playing. Will we get there? I don't know next time, but I'm hoping so. Ziggs, I'm glad to see my boy when they reduced his bomb stuff prior. It kind of gutted him, and so I'm glad to see him getting some buffs now. Headliners, not the craziest thing. Something worth noting is the 5% is what Mort did kind of touch on, was the 5% Omnivamp for Yasuo. I don't think it's that much when you consider that you're giving him a 50% increase in the bonus scaling that he gets. I think it's going to be fine. Augments, these ones I'm not too, there's nothing really big on these ones, but the next set of slide, this one right here, the Mosher one, I think is actually going to be a really good augment. Before, it worked off of the enemies surrounding you, so you can kind of play around that, and you can never get the, as much as you wanted to right away. If this works the way that I'm thinking it works, you could play the honeycomb with your Mosher in the middle, and you start with 18 stats of everything. So you get 18%, 18 flat, right? All the stats you get. I think if I'm reading this correctly, that's how it works, and that's going to be really good if you can get it. Plus, you throw in some of the buffs to pentakills, or to like maybe this a Vi reroll comp, Mosher comp. She got buffs too with Punk. Just saying, keep it in mind. It might be bigger than we think. For items, Adaptive Helm, really good. I think there's a little typo here that there's not showing the AP that you get, because with the Radiant, if I'm correct, you get both, depending, it doesn't matter where you're standing. So that's kind of a double buff if you think about it that way. Archangels, didn't think it really needed a buff, but that's fine, whatever, it's not that much. Bloodthirster, I love the idea of adding more AP. I talked about this earlier, but interestingly, TFT decided that their abilities were going to scale off of AP and AD for some champions, and they made them scale in like interesting ways. So MF, for instance, her actual damage scales with AD, but her AP or her attack speed scales with AP. So it actually gives you benefits depending on the way you want to play or what comp you're playing it with to get AP or AD or maybe a little bit of both. And so I like that when they add more to that. So when they added AD to blue buff, right? It's that kind of thing. And now they're adding AP to Bloodthirster. I like that a lot. Blue buff, fine. It might be just the RE syndrome because not a lot of I didn't see much blue buff outside of RE, but it's fine. I love the Declaw buffs. I love Declaw. Fine with the Evan Shroud. Gargoyle Stone Point. I really like the 100 HP, but I still think it's enough to choose Gargoyle Stone Point over other items. Gunblade, I love the item as a whole. Cool to see buffs. Ionic Spark, one of my favorite items in the game. I'm happy to see the 200 health buff. Addition to it, I'm going to probably be slamming this now over Declaw. Sorry, just going to happen. Dual Gauntlet, it's fine. It's whatever. It's a good item. I'm not saying to try to say whatever. It's just that you don't play Dual Gauntlet for the AP. It gives you play it so your abilities can crit. So it's not something the 5 AP is not something that I find to be justifiably great. Namicon, intrinsically, it's just really bad. I went into it already. You have Sunfire Cape that literally gives every stat you'd want as a tank. And you have something in red buff right here that gives you every single thing you'd want as a carry, including an AP carry. Better than Namicon because it gives you flat damage bonus, and it gives you attack speed, which helps you cast faster. So it's just like there's not a reason why I think you would ever choose Namicon. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not thinking of something else, but I don't believe it's something that I will be building still, unfortunately. Deathcap, I like the idea they're going. They're finally making it more of an amped item versus just a flat, AP item. I appreciate that. Don't know if the 8 to 20% is that much, but I think the 12 to 50%, that's going to be a big one. And if you get the Radiant, I think it's just going to be good purely just because of how high the number is. And the Radiant and these two, fine. Huge is the true damage spat. No longer is bling bonus. I don't know if I actually agree with that. I agree that true damage spat was too good. 10% bonus damage flat out. Super easy to make. I understand. I just still like the idea that the reason why you build true damage is because you get the true damage aspect to it, but also because of the bling bonus, it adds a little flair to your abilities, and I like that. I like that aspect to it, and I actually wish that maybe they they bring it back in some other way. I don't know if it gives you like 5 or 10% adaptive force instead, right? It gives you adaptive force, so it actually can be put on, a carry instead, or maybe it gives you either 5 or 10% adaptive force or 5%, 5 to 10% MR and magic resistance or something like that, right? So you can also put on tanks. I just think I like the bling bonus aspect of it. I kind of hope they bring it back in some way that doesn't just make it a flat damage buff. These minor buffs, nothing crazy. I think the Twitch is going to be something to look out for. He got the executioner buffs. There's some punk buffs going around, and the AD with how punk works, they give you AD. It's interesting. They're reducing the explosion damage, so it's hard to see. He might just do a lot more damage with executioner and the AD buff to the small enough targets, but I don't know. It's hard to see. I like the idea of it being spread out, but that here's what it is, and we'll see how it plays. And outside of that, the Caitlyn buffs, Caitlyn neutral side grade, let's call it, is interesting. Reducing the AD because of the 8-bit buffs, but nerfing her AD, but then increasing the spell AP is going to be interesting. Maybe go blue buff now because it gives AP AD plus it helps you cast. And maybe go Shojin and something else. Anyway, so I think that's gonna do it, guys. Been a long ass video. We're an hour 30 in. If you're still here, appreciate you, love you. I'm excited to play the patch tomorrow. I'm going to be streaming it tomorrow on Twitch. So if you are watching this, come on by. I'm also probably going to be playing some point of the new season of League. I'm pretty sure both of them are out, and I want to play both. Haven't been feeling League for a while, so I'm hoping to get back into it. And then TFT. I mean, I've been grinding that stuff. I still love the game, so gonna be playing that tomorrow. So anyway, stop on by. Thank you guys again. Make sure to give Mort a like, subscribe, love, all that stuff. He deserves it way more than anyone else in TFT. He's the GOAT. And so, guys, thank you so much. Take it easy.